Alright guys, so I wanted to go over the basics of rendering in Maya. So first off, making sure we have our outliner open over here. I'm in my attribute editor. We have channel box and all that. I just want to make sure I'm in my attribute editor. I'm in modeling and I'm in my poly modeling tab. I'm going to click a sphere and I'll drop that in there. I'm just going to click my scale tool, scale that up. I'm going to come over here and click the plane, and that's going to drop a plane in there, and I'm just going to scale that up. And then I'm going to click my move tool, and then by using V as in violin and that top arrow, so V as in violin, I'll snap it all the way to the bottom. And that's pretty good. V as in violin, just make sure. Yeah, looks pretty good. Okay, this grid, yeah, it's not really anything that's there. It's just there for visualization. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. So if you want to toggle that off, you can just click that and it'll toggle that off. And you can always toggle it back on. It's just there as a guide, but I'm just going to turn it off for now. Okay, so we have our objects in our scene. So we need two things to get some renders. We need lighting and we need shaders. So at the very top is Arnold, and again, if you don't see that, or if you're looking for a plugin that's not there, you just want to turn that on in your plugin manager. And the way you get there is to go to Windows, down to Settings and Preferences, and over to Plugin Manager. So again, Windows, Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager. You just click on that, and then you just want to scroll through here looking for your plugin. So Arnold, all the way here at the bottom, it's the mtoa.mll. You just want to make sure there's some checkboxes there. Mine are already good, so I'm just going to close out. And so I want to make a light. And so we're going to do HDR lighting images. And so we're going to go to Arnold, and we're going to go down to Lights, and over to Skydome Light, and we're going to put an HDRI in there. Alright, great. Because I'm already in my attribute editor, it's the HDR, or the Skydome Light has popped up over here. I just want to look at color, and making sure I'm at the very top. Color, and let's go over to the little checker box. Click that, and I want to make sure I click on File. Do not click on PSD File, that'll give you an error. So let's click on File. And then this will pop up, and I just want to click on the little folder, and this is just where I'm going to go and select one of the HDRI images. So I'm going to click that sunset, and definitely download this pack or try different ones out, but I'm going to do sunset for now, and there we go. Okay, so to get just a still frame render, I just need to come up here to that little clapboard that has nothing on it. So not the eyeball, not the IPR, not the one with the gear or the shader ball or the one with the layer. I just want to make sure I'm doing the one with nothing on it. And if I click that, that'll give me a render. Okay, and if this was like my treasure chest or something like that and I was happy with it, I could just save out this picture by going to File, Save Image. Maybe I put it on my desktop. You set it to like TIFF or JPEG, and then I could just call this, you know, treasure chest or whatever, and then just click the save button. Since this isn't really a treasure chest and I'm not trying to save out the image right now, I'm not going to click that. I'm just going to hit, I'm just going to close out of this. But that's how you would basically get a render, name it, and save it. So I'm just going to close out of that though. Okay. So let's look at the way that we can set up the continuously updating render. So again, if we come up here and we click Arnold, and we just click that little render, the very first option that comes up, it's going to give us this tab, and automatically it's just going to come out and pop up like this as a window. Just remember, we can dock this window by grabbing the bar. If I pull all the way to the left of this center window, as I kind of come over here where it breaks, we'll see as my mouse hits that a blue bar pops up. And I just get the blue bar to pop up, and I let go. and it'll just dock it there. So anything I change now will actually change in here. Okay, so we've got lighting. Let's set up some shaders. So up at the top, let's click that little shader ball. And over here, since Arnold is on, if we go down to Arnold and click on shader, we want to make a couple of these AI standard surface shaders. So I'm going to click it once. And if I click P-Sphere 1 over here, and I come back here, so I've got P-Sphere 1 highlighted because it's selected, and I come back to my AI standard surface. I'm going to just kind of come right around to where this little bar is, and I'm just going to hover my mouse in here and right click and hold, and the menu pops up. I'm going to go up to Assign Material to Selection. So I'm right clicking, I'm using the right mouse button, and I'm just clicking and holding to bring up that menu, and then I go up to that option. Okay. So let's make another AI standard surface, and actually just popped it on top of the first one. So if I pull it over here, I can see it, and you can see 2 at the end of it, and that one has a 1. So I'm going to assign this 2 to the plane. So I'm going to come over here and click plane, come back in here, hover in that bar, and then right click, hold, and assign material to viewport selection. Okay. Now I'm just going to close out of this because I can get back to these materials fairly easy just by selecting the objects. And so I'm just going to click in here and select that P-Sphere plane 1, or I could actually click it here, or I could even click it over here. But just click on that P-Sphere 1, or the P-Plane 1, sorry, and we'll get these tabs that pop up. If you are ever going to do any glass or anything that you need to see through, just know that you're going to need to be in the P-Plane Shape 1 tab or the P-Sphere Shape 1 tab. And if you are, you'll see this little Arnold option down here. You just want to come in here and uncheck the box for opaque, and that'll allow you, as you drop opacity or something like that, to be able to actually see through things. If that's checked, it really doesn't matter what you do to the opacity of the shader. You won't really be able to see through it that well. So just know that. I don't know why that comes on by default, but probably shouldn't. Okay, so we are on that P-Shape 1, and we could actually do that for this as well. So if I clicked on that, came over to Arnold, I could turn the opaque off for that as well. So I turned it off for the plane, and then I needed to select the sphere and then turn that off too. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the plane, and I'm going to go to AI Standard Surface 2. And this is where our attributes start popping up. And so I'm just going to take that slider for color and just pull that all the way up. I don't want it to be a full white, so I'm just going to bring that down a little bit. And I don't really want it shiny. Maybe you do, maybe, that's an option. It's an artistic decision. Maybe you do want a little bit of shine so you can see some reflections. For now, I don't really want that, so I'm just going to come to Specular and just slide that all the way to 0. And I still get lighting and shadows, but I'm not really getting reflection. Okay, so that's just some of the basics. I know we talked about Fresnel and bidirectional reflection curves and how those relate to the IOR, or the index of refraction. So just know you can always play around with that. And we'll actually play around with that a little bit more as we jump into the sphere. So let's click on the sphere. AI Standard Surface 1 pops up. So let's change the weight of that shader to 1. And maybe we do want to increase the IOR. Let's drop the color for now, just so we can see what we're doing when we change some of that stuff. So if we bring up the IOR, we'll see some reflection differences. So as we slide that IOR around, also know that you can play around with metal and all that sort of stuff too. So play around with all these settings. Do remember that roughness blurs our reflections. So we still get the reflections, but if I increase the roughness, it'll blur that out. All right, I'm just going to put that back to point 1. Couple other things. You have all these, play around with all these, the anisotropy and all that sort of stuff. What that does is it kind of, for lack of better words, it'll take some of those bright areas and just really stretch those highlights into some interesting shapes. So, but yeah, research that, play around with that, play around with all these settings. I do want to come down to transmission and show you that a little bit. So this plays around with a little bit of refraction too, and allowing us to see for light to be refracted through our object. So as I turn that up, I mean, obviously, if I turn it really high, we're getting all this sky detail even in the bottom here. So feel free to play around with some of those settings. Yeah, just go through there and play around a little bit. I'm not going to get too much into subsurface. That would be like skin and stuff like that. Maybe we'll touch bases on that later. Maybe coat and emission. For right now, I don't want to touch those. And we won't really touch thin film right now either. But I did want to point out geometry. And so you have this opacity option. And so if you pull that down, you can see we can start to really make that invisible or being able to see through. So if you have like spectacles or glasses or something like that, by playing around with the opacity and the transmission, you can start to get some interesting effects as all that goes. So anyways, I'm just going to turn all that back off. So I'm turning the transmission off, putting our opacity back to full, and that just kind of brings us back to here. I will show you one last thing. We'll talk more about this in class. But if you look up here, you have these presets. If you click and hold, you get a bunch of presets that you could go over and do replace. So you could replace the whole shader, and it'll reset. It'll set all these settings down here to the settings for that preset. So sometimes this can be nice to just go through and try some different presets and go through and see what settings they've used. So like for this bright light, there's a little bit of emission and things like that. So, but we'll talk more about some of that stuff later. But yeah, definitely come through some of this and see what some of these different shaders do. Just clicking on preset and holding. And then going over to replace, you can get some different settings, and you can kind of go through and see what was set and why it was set and all that sort of stuff. So anyways, I hope this has been helpful.